yeah, I guess I created a new directory called hotel guests. So let's cd into that. You can see if I do like ls-a, there's nothing right in here. Okay, so when you create a project, generally like one of the first things you'll do is initialize a new Git repository. Before doing that, let's just, we can create just like a markdown file, or let's just do an index.py file, and then we can just talk a little bit about what is the usefulness of this thing. So Git is, it's referred to as like a version control system, okay, which I think is pretty accurate, meaning like you want to keep track of the different versions of your code base. All right. So like, what is an example of everyone probably doing this is whenever you use a Google Doc or Microsoft Word, right, and you do save as. Okay. And if you think about it, like lots of times if you've like coded essays and wrote essays in high school or something like that, maybe you did, like Mark Twain, 1. And then you're like, well, I'm not quite sure. I'm updating it, but I don't want to, change, delete the old version. So then you do Mark Twain 2, right? And then the same thing keeps going, right? So by the end, you have like Mark Twain 20. And Git is really like a very similar kind of idea, in the sense that, or it's born from a similar type of problem, which is like we want to update our code base, 1, but we don't want to lose previous versions of our code base, 2. And then 3, I'd say like we also want to be able to like see the history of our code base. So one of my fellow developers used to describe it as like time travel, right? Because it allows you to, what you'll see, like it allows you to go back in time ultimately if you want to. If you save each version of it, of the document, you can, or of your code base, you can go back to say like when the code base looked like this, And why is that useful? Well, it might have been working at that point and maybe now it isn't, right? Another reason why that might be very valuable is you may be looking at a piece of code and you want to know, well, why did they write the code in that way? If I change it, will it break certain things? So Git can allow you to see, if you just see like a definition, it can allow you to see when was this definition added, and like a little bit even as to why, right? If someone took some notes with this save as functionality, then I can go back and see, okay, this was saved, and we'll see like with some commentary as to what the developer was working on. All right. So Git is good for like going back in time, right? For like moving in between versions of something, right? It can save old versions. It can tell you about the history of a code base, right? All of these things are really useful. So in terms of how it works, let's start here. So you can kind of see if we do ls-a, all we have now is just this index.py file. If I want to initialize a new Git repository, I'll type git init. I think like for Mac, you may need to have downloaded Xcode. I'm not sure if it's on there for free, but I'll do git init. And you can see it says I initialize a new Git repository in this hotel guests directory .git. Okay. Remember, if you just type ls, you won't see any dot files or folders. They're hidden. But if you do ls-a, you'll see that we have this .git folder now. All right. And this is what's going to, under the hood, we won't like go cd into this or anything. I mean, we could, but we won't. But this is what under the hood will like keep track of the status of our code base, which brings us to our first Git method. We can look at Git status. Okay. And Git status to me is kind of like ls. It tells you like, it's a way to just see the overview as to what's going on. So I type git status and I see, hey, there's no commits yet. All there is this file that we're not keeping track of called index.py, which makes sense, right? In this folder, we just have this one file, index.py. And now if say you like make changes to the code base and you want to save it, ultimately what you'll need to do is make a commit. And it tells you that in order to make the commit, first you need to add call this get add file name to specify what you would like to essentially save. So unlike Microsoft Word, right, where like you save this version 1, you save this version 2, and say you save all the pages, you know, when you actually save it. So with Git, we'll be doing something like this. We'll do git add and then specify the file that we want to ultimately save. Let's create 2 files. Touch main.py. Okay, so we have these 2 files. Let's type git status. You can see that, you know, neither of these files are kind of being tracked yet. And now let's say like I've been working on it, but this one kind of like, you know, added this new feature, which say it like prints out, you know, print some sort of book or something. Print book I'm reading. Why am I doing this? Hotel. Let's say it prints guests, displays guests. Right, and that's kind of what we're working on, is displaying the guests. So then I want to save these changes, and I want to say like, hey, this code is about like, you know, displaying these guests. So what will I do? First, I always type in git status. Okay, here's my changes on this index.py file. I'm going to do git add, then the name of the file. Git add index.py. All right, and now let's look at git status. You can see that basically now we have 2 categories. We have this is my changes to be committed, is the changes I made in index.py. So these changes. Anything I did here is not going to be committed. All right? This is called staging. So I added this file to staging, kind of like a rocket. Like I always think of like a rocket being like staged on the platform, ready to launch, right? So we're putting this on the stage. And now if I do git commit -m, and let's say, you know, that we fixed added functionality to display guests, then that will actually create a commit. And that means like it will essentially save our first version of the code base. All right. So press return here. And you'll see if I look at git log that this now has been saved. The other thing you'll see, I'm going to go through all this again, but just to prove that it only saved this one file change, I'll do git show. And you can see git show is only including changes from index.py. It's not including anything from main.py. Okay? Let's do this whole thing again. I'm going to start all over by doing ls-a and then just delete this Git repository. Okay, so what do I do to start? Do git init, right? This will create a new Git repository. This will give me the functionality to like start tracking my code base. Then what will I do? If we type git status, right, we'll see that, okay, we're not tracking anything right now. We want to save the changes of index.py as kind of like a version, right? Like we want to save these changes because apparently this fixed some sort of functionality or added some functionality here. All right. So what do we need to do? We need to specify what we would like to store in this new version, and we do that with the git add. Git, you'll notice Git provides very good like hints / documentation, like automatically. Hey, no commits yet, right? Because we started a new project. We have only untracked files here. Use git add file to specify what will be committed. So we'll do that. Git add index.py. We'll add this file or the changes to that file. And now if I type git status, it says, okay, you still have not made any changes yet. All you've done is added this file to staging. And because of that, we currently have this file to be committed, and this is not there, right? If you want it there, you have to add it as well. So we'll do now the next step, which is git commit -m. The M stands for message, right? So git commit and add a message saying like what you are doing. So we'll say like, you know, what do we say before? Add functionality to display guests. Now if I look at git status again, you can see this file is still not tracked. We didn't specify anything to do with it. And we can also do git log, which shows me like a log of all the changes, right? It shows me each one of those kind of like versions. Okay, so this is that version of add functionality to display guests. If you type in git show, you can see exactly what that change was. So git show shows me the most recent commit. All right, let's let me just again review by taking a couple notes. So what do we learn so far? All right, git init. All right, initialize a new repository. Then we saw git status. See, the files, what's committed, what's tracked, what's not, in staging. Then finally, to add something to staging, we did git add the file name. And this specifies what will be committed. And then we finally did git commit -m. And in quotation marks, we specified like, okay, add feature or something, right? And this finally makes the commit of the staged files. So of what we specified to add. And then finally we did git log, shows a log of all of the commits. And then the last thing we did was git show, right? Which was show changes made in the most recent commit. Questions about this material?
Sorry, when we do git init, it initializes a new repository in GitHub, or like wherever you set it.
Everything here is local on your Mac right now. So when you do git init, it's a folder that lives on your laptop. And literally just inside the repository, inside the folder, right? This git.git folder lives inside the hotel guest, and that's all it's about. It's just tracking this project. Other questions? Git init, git status, see the status. I'm always typing git status. Git add to like specify what files. Git commit is now, okay, right, this adds, your changes to staging. This saves it. This is your save as a version, right? Git log, show a log of all the commits. Git show. I did want to, if you do like Google Docs, right, you can have, where's like the history? Is it here? Oh man.
If you get back to
file versions or something.
What do I? Hold on. Was that Wayne?
File.
click the top right where you got rid of the bar. Yeah, we want to see the entire thing. Yeah. So once you save it, yeah, okay. So now it says save to the drive.
Oh.
Like type your and then you do version history that way, or there's a link that comes up with that cloud is at the top, and it'll show you the version.
Great.
Yeah.
So this is the same exact idea, right? And I can save it, file, and now see the version history. So you can see this is how I started. This is like my first Git commit. This is my second one. This whole thing I would see in Git by doing git log, right? And then git show displays to me my most recent version, okay? So the only kind of new functionality is with Git, you also have this idea of staging, where you specify what changes you want to add to a commit. And notice also, this is pretty cool, you can restore this version. We'll see, you can do the same thing with Git as well. You can go back in time through history. All right. Let's just do one more example. I'll share my screen. because I just want to bring out the point that if you make changes, let's say we do this, def hide guest or something like that, or display first name of guest. All right, and now let's type get status. Okay, notice two things. One, we have these two files, right? We haven't added either of them. They're not to like Git, so they're not to our repo to Git, so they're not tracked. Notice this is not a new file, but rather a modified file. In fact, what you can do is you can type git diff, all right, and then the name of the file, and it will show you the difference between the current state of the repository, what has been committed, right? So this change has already been committed, and this is new. Why is that very useful? Well, because you're working for half a day or something like that, and then before you commit something and push it to production, you want to be able to see all right, what are the changes I made, and make sure all of them are good. Right? Maybe you left in some comments or some to-dos, or you commented out code and you want to remove, right? We want this to be clean. So this git diff will show you the difference, right? I did git diff index.py, and that shows you the difference between these files. If you rename the files in the middle of your project, will it track the change? Oftentimes, no. I think there is a way maybe to have it do that. So for instance, if you move index.py to something else, I don't think by default it will keep track of that. Okay. But this git diff, it will work throughout your entire code base. It's just that it doesn't know, Git does not know about main or readme.md so far, because they don't exist in your repository. So there's nothing for it to compare it against, so it just doesn't display. But for index.py, right, it will show that. So the other thing I want to show you is if you now do git add, and you can do git add index.py, let's say git status, you can see this is what's ready to be committed. Now if I want to, so far when I've done git add, what I've done is git add the file name. You can also say add everything in the current directory. And how do we specify things in the current directory? With the dot, right? So you can also do git add dot. And now this will include, I believe, these two files as well. So now let's type git status. And you can see now all the files in the directory are included, right? You can do git diff for across all the files just by not specifying a file afterwards. I guess it did not see, because diff is actually just the difference between what has not been added yet, what's been changed but not added, and the most recent version. So once you add it, it's not showing any kind of any specified differences. So let me just illustrate that. Oh man. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can think of here's your history. Right? This is like a log of all your commits. So this is, commit 1. I'll just do C1, right? Actually, and this is like, say, C0. So let's say we start at 0, and then we went to 1. This is a history. And then you make a change here. This is diff, right? The difference in the code base. And now you finally git add, right? So you made some sort of change here. Once you add it, and when you do git diff, it will see the difference. But once you add it, it's only looking at the things that have not been added, and yet you didn't specify git add with. So they're not in staging, and they're also not in your history, right? This is what changes you've made that are not in staging. Once you've made it to staging, it won't by default show you those differences. And then you finally have that last step, which is to git commit. All right. So what do we got to do? we can, we can look at git status. We can see we're about to update everything, and then you can make the git commit, right? At this point, all the changes to each of these files, everything that has not been made in the previous commit, they're going to be added. They're going to be updated, right? And in our new commit. Okay, so let's do git commit.m. Let's say add git summary commands, comma, update hotel displays. And now let's look at git log. And now you can see there's 2 commit messages, right? This is our original one, the first one we did, which you can see the time that it was done, 7:30 or whatever. We added functionality to display guests. Then the second thing we did was we added, made the second commit of adding git commands, updating the hotel displays. Notice it also tells you who did this stuff. So it shows like I did this at this time. Why is that useful? Because later on, right, when you're like trying to figure out why these changes were needed or occurred, you can, tap me on the shoulder or ping me and ask me about it, right? So that's very useful. And then you can view any of these changes individually. So if you do, again, if we did git show, this is now showing, okay, hey, this is what was changed in the index.py. You see the pluses and the green? This already existed, display guests, and this is new, display the first name of guests. I'm going to press space. This was also added, right, in the readme.md file, right, was all this. See all the pluses? Okay, main.py was added, but it seems like basically nothing was there. I guess we have this other stuff comment. So you can see that these 3 in this most recent commit was changes across index.py, main.py, readme, and it's showing you what was updated. So the best illustration of this is it knows that this is a new function and this already existed. All right, which is very useful. All right, other questions? Questions about this? Let me talk about one more concept, which is the idea of branches. Okay, so when you're working on a project, I didn't want to show that, hold on. Okay, when you're working on a project, this is what will occur, which is that you're working on, there is a main branch, right, which is kind of, let's say for our purposes, this is like a production branch. So this is the code base that is solid, is very good, right? And you can imagine that, what is this thing? It's a history. We have a bunch of commits all over the place, right? Like one after the other. Each one of which, ideally, you've run your tests on, it is looking solid, someone has, reviewed it, and this is good to go, all right? So then what happens is you're given a task to perform. What you want to do is not work on this. You don't want to work on the main production branch because you can mess something up that, can then filter in the code base and everyone's relying on it. It's bad news. So what do? You create a new branch. This new branch, and you call it, my feature. So maybe the display guests, or we'll call it, we want to add a new feature of hiding guests, personal info or whatever. Okay. When you create a new branch, it still inherits all the history from this previous branch, right? So, but if you, make a new commit, this main branch will not get it. So that's literally why it's thought of as a branch. This is your root, essentially, and just like a tree. Here, you've spun off of it. We have a branch, and you'll be making commits on this. All right? So you'll create a new branch, and I'll show you how to do that. and then you'll start making commits on this branch. Eventually, after the code looks good, you've run all the tests, it has exactly what you want, you will merge the branch back into the main branch. And that will have the effect of adding those 3 commits. These 3 commits will be added to the main branch. Okay? So the benefit of this is while you're kind of working, you can make progress. You don't have to make sure everything is 100% all the time. That's very hard to do in software engineering. But you can make progress on it, still save your work, and then before merging it, check it, run all the tests, make sure everything's clean, delete all the comments, then merge that into the main branch, right? And now everyone, other people eventually can get your updates, okay? So that's the idea, is you'll create, when you start, everything's clean, everything's good, we're about to add something new. I'm not going to do that directly on the clean, perfect code, right? But rather create a new branch, make my changes, then merge it back in. So how do we do that? We can notice that by default, if I type git branch -a to display all, notice I have by default on the main branch, right? And this has this git log. If I do -2, that means just show the most recent 2 commits. It turns out there are only 2. But okay, so this has these 2 commits. Now what I'll do is I'll do git checkout -b. So this will create a new branch, and we'll call it, add, or hide PI info for guests, right? So this is basically the name of my feature. So when I do git checkout -b, it'll do 2 things. One, it will create this branch, and 2, I'll be switched over to that branch. So you see that? Switch to a new branch called hide info for guests. Now I'll do git branch -a again. And you can see I'm now on this branch. And if I look at git log, I still have these previous commits. So just to show you visually what occurred, if we go back to the whiteboard, right, we start on the main branch, we made 2 commits. Then what happened is, I guess now you can see. We started on the whiteboard, on the main branch, we made 2 commits, then we created a new branch, right, called the hide personal info, and now we're about to make changes on that branch. Okay? Finally, when we're ready to merge it, we'll have to merge the changes over to the main branch. Okay? So let's do that. So we are on this branch. Let's look at our code base. Our code base is exactly the same. And now let's add a function of def hide personal info of guests. And now let's take a look at our status. So we can see, okay, this file has been modified. If I want to see precisely what's been changed, I'll do git diff. Okay, we added this new function. That looks pretty good. What's the next thing? We want to create a new commit on this branch, and that's, we're on a new branch, so we're good. So now we just do git commit -m, hide personal info of guests. All right. I forgot to do git add, everyone. So after first, so notice it says changes. It's no changes added to commit. Use git add or okay. So do that. So do git add. I can do git add dot to add everything, all the files, or I can just do git add index.py. Now I'll type git status again. Notice this is in staging now, right? Changes to be committed, and I can do git commit -m add or hide personal info of guests. Now let's take a look at the git log. Just remember, I'm on the feature branch, hide PI info for guests. So now if I do git log here, I have this commit, right? If I go back, however, git checkout main, and I do git log here, there's only 2 commits. Neither of them are the hide personal info, right? So this is kind of where we are, is we are back to, we have this main branch has 2 commits on it, and this feature branch has an extra commit. So our next step is to take the extra commit from the feature branch and to move it onto the main branch, right? So right now we have the following. We have a main branch that has 2 commits, and then we made a feature branch that has 1 commit called the hide personal info. And what we'll need to do is merge the hide personal info, this stuff, into the main branch. So if we look at it, right, we still do not have on the main branch anything about hiding the personal info. But what we can do is say git merge. I have to check out the name of it. Git branch -a. It is git merge hide pi info for guess. So git merge this. Once I do this, it will take the commit, the extra commit over here, and move it over. You see that? Fast forward, one chat file changed. Let's take a look at git log now. So now we have this new commit on the main branch. Okay, I know that's a little bit much, but what we did, let's think about what we did. We created a new branch. I'll show you on here. So we were on main, then we created a new branch. How do we do that? We did git checkout -b, feature branch name, whatever it was, hide personal info. When you do that, the feature branch inherits everything that it spun off of. So it inherits these commits. It still has these same commits from the main branch. But we added new commits here. So we added, did git add, did git commit, and then we have a new branch over here, over on this hide personal info branch. So we did a git commit. Then what did we do next? We had to check out, switch back over to the main branch, go back to the main branch. This branch still only has 2 commits in it, so we need to take this extra commit and move it here. And the way you do that is you say git merge hide personal info, basically the name of the branch that you want to merge onto it. Merging it will only merge, add on the new commits, not the existing ones, right? The existing ones are already there. So this does exactly what we want. How did that feel? I know there are obviously readings about it, and then we'll probably have to practice it.
Hey, Jeff, if you had like 2 people working on this and then they had 2 separate branches, would they ever be working on the same file, or if they were, or would they just have?
Yeah, unfortunately that can happen. That's like a conflict, like a merge conflict. And yeah, you do have to handle that. It takes some context. But yeah, I don't want to totally get into, but that's a merge conflict. So basically what you have to do is decide whose changes should win, right? The question is, okay, well, they both make changes to main branch, whose changes should win, right? And you'll have to, Git will recognize 2 different conflicting changes have been made, and will kind of ask you, which of these do you want to keep? Other question. That was a good question, but I don't want to get super deep into it. Other questions?
So yeah, hi Jeff. So I'm thinking of a scenario like you have made changes to multiple files, like I think for commit, like you can commit one file at a time, and then that way you have a message for every one, like specific what did you do for that file, like a message. But you can also like commit all the files all together, like have one message, like what's
preferred? Yeah, basically you want to commit for one like fix essentially. So maybe in order to, let's say, to like add this hide personal info of guest. Well, I need to make a change to like the guest file. Maybe I need to, there's like some sort of user file, right? All of them are about this one small change. So I will add, kind of have each of those changes together as one package, and then have a commit message, right? Git commit, right? Like, needed to hide hid personal info, right? So in this case, we're adding, you would do like git add, the guest.py, git add, user.py. So long as all of them are contributing to the same like individual, what we call like a story, right? The same individual fix. So generally in coding, you're either like, it's either a bug or a feature, and and you want to say, okay, here's one small bug that you're working on, and as long as the fix is just like either contributing to that one small bug or that one small feature, that's kind of what you correspond a commit message to. Yeah. Cool. Other questions? All right. I will deploy the readings for this. Stay with us.